and welcome to the new councillors and new committee members. Thursday, the 30th of July. So a bit of housekeeping first. There are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear a fire alarm sound, please treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the buildings via the stairs. And the place that you go is not the car park, it's opposite the police station on the grass over there. It's really important, that, please. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live, and phones should be switched off unless they are being used for the meeting. Please only speak when you're invited to do so by the chair. Speak clearly into your microphone. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the agenda. Can I have any apologies or change in membership? I do know that Jock Rafferty's not here and he doesn't have a substitute, so we're down one member, but I'm sure that will be fine for today. There's no other changes. I think everybody's. So on to the minutes. And remember that you can vote for the minutes even if you weren't here. So if you've had to read them, I've had to read them, they're fine. Can I have some?
Sorry, can I ask a question regarding the minutes? I note that we don't have on our agenda today what was on the previous meeting, which was update on progress and actions completed. And I'm reading the minutes. Obviously, I wasn't there at the meeting. I wasn't part of this council then, but there were a couple of items where it said there'd be an update in the July meeting, and I cannot see an update in our agenda or any of the papers that we've got. Those two items are with regard to the Community Safety Partnership, the Crime and Disorder, the CCTV, and the Flood and Coastal Erosion Scrutiny. I just wondered at which point in this meeting will we get an update on those, as it says that in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you using the online one, online agenda? Yeah, so my one actually does have a bit about update on the scrutiny actions and stuff. Unfortunately, it got taken off the online one, but it is on there. We're going to touch on it, and it's really important for me that you understand what was coming through and why we did it. So we are doing that, and we can pick it up in the work plan as well for anything you want going forward. Thank you very much. So
I'm happy to propose the minutes, Chair.
Anybody second that? Thank you very much. And just affirmation, please. You can abstain if you want to, but you can do it if you want to the minutes. But that we've got enough anyway. Thank you very much. So do I sign every page or just the end? Thank you, colleagues. On to the next declaration of interest. Is there any declarations of interest? If, because obviously we've got quite a few new members, so if you have any declarations you're not sure of yet, you can say it at the time if you want to as well, and we'll make a note of that if it comes up that you think that. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Something that doesn't appear on my statutory register of interest, but I am the lead on 5 registered premises with environmental health, but I deem this to be non-pecuniary and therefore it shouldn't impede. I don't take myself out of the debate or any results of decision making on that.
Thank you. It's always best to be on the safe side and be open about stuff. So thank you very much for that. But like I said, anybody else, if anything comes up, just say it at the time. Okay. So on to public questions. We've only got one question. They're not here today. I don't think they're online. Are they online? No. So the written response will go online anyway, and to the person, won't they? Yeah. Thank you very much. On to number 5. So the going back to what you said, Councillor Ovian, about reflective scrutiny. So over to Natasha Dix, who's going to lead on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We were going to go through the recommendations on flood scrutiny from previous committees. Could you confirm if you'd like to go through all actions or just those which are still in progress?
I think just give a bit of background to why we were doing it first, and then just give a flavour of what it is, and then make sure everybody gets a copy of it so they can see what was going on, and then we can move forward from there. Thank you.
Certainly. So over the last political cycle, which was last year's committee run, the flood risk element went through the number of Section 19 reports that were produced following the severe flooding that the Isle of Wight experienced in 2023. So we went through between October and January all of the Section 19s that have been reported, and the committee made a number of recommendations against each one, and also scrutinised the Ventnor coastal flood scheme in December. Of those, there was a number of recommendations made at those committees for our partner agencies and the Isle of Wight Council to take forward. Of those, the majority are complete, but still in progress are the continuing meetings with our different flood groups. Obviously, none of those are closed, so that remains open and in progress. There was an item for Idem Roads to create some education videos on drains and for other stakeholders to look at similar, to help people understand how gully systems and drains function and to clear up some misunderstandings. That is still not started and awaiting. There was an action to write to DEFRA regarding the difficulty in obtaining personal flood resilience grants for renters. That action has taken forward. We've not had a response on that. There was a number of completed actions reviewing surface water and catchment areas, and writing to Flood RE and ensuring everyone has the information on how to get flood insurance post-flooding. That was communicated and through all of the flood groups into their local communities. In December, we had a number of actions relating to the Ventnor Coastal Scheme, which have been confirmed to be complete by the Environment Agency, who are here tonight to discuss the Shanklin scheme. We also had some requests for the Environment Agency and Southern Water that are still in progress. One was a meeting with the Environment Agency team with oversight to constructing a business case with other members who wanted to be involved. The other was a Southern Water action for the installation of a full sewerage and surface water drainage network in Bonchurch East and Ventnor. Southern Water have updated that request through the Flood Coastal Risk Forum, and have been quite clear that there would have to be a number of legislative and financial changes for them to be able to do such a thing. The other actions completed by the EA were that they would look for a front desk office in Ventnor for the project when the project gets to delivery. So you're underway with that project. That the local labour force would be used as part of these schemes to make sure that we are putting social value back through the delivery of all of our schemes on the island. That a clear communication channel is set up for local stakeholders, which we now have in coastal cafes throughout each of those EA coastal schemes. And that collaboration and partnership between the Environment Agency, Isle of Wight Council and other flood risk agencies continues, which is in progress, and we do have those quarterly meetings as well as our project and programme boards. The last meeting that we held in January looked at the Eastern Yard Section 19s. Of that, we had a number of recommendations you've not received updates on yet as a committee. So the first of those was that they had the continuation of iWalk's work to support the communities across the island in flood risk resilience, and that is continuing in an open action. That the community's voice will be better captured in future Section 19 reports. So that has been noted as part of our future process. Next time we have a flood risk incident that we need to have Section 19, we will make sure that we review how the community's voice is captured thoroughly in that process. That a public education campaign was undertaken around good practice and encouraging responsible behaviour around watercourses. That is being worked on by both the Environment Agency's Rivers team and our council team, and we will have a number of flood awareness communications prepared for this winter well in advance of any rain should it eventually come to us. We then had the existing contact numbers and reporting channels be promoted more widely. We've done this through our emergency management team, as well as updating the council's website through our communication and engagement team, and ensuring that all of our flood risk groups do have a full list of those numbers. We're also ensuring that an updated booklet is printed and available for this winter, should we get to a point of having that rain that may become more intense and may cause flooding again. The next one was that officers consider whether Section 19 tracker with live status updates can be made publicly accessible. The Section 19 tracker has around 12 different tabs in an Excel workbook and hundreds of actions within it, which makes it very difficult to be an accessible document. What we're looking at is some summary actions to put onto the website that are in an accessible format, as we are required to do on the internet, and an option to be able to come in and view the full tracker, as it would be very difficult for us to put an accessible version of that Excel workbook into the internet. But we will be trying to find a way to ensure that full summaries of actions are included on our flood risk pages. And the final one was that information on flooding responsibilities will be shared more widely using updated guidance from the former Living on the Edge document that was, I can't remember if that was an EA document or a Southern Water document, but I do have the update that information is being updated for this winter's guidance. Thank you. So those were all the recommendations from the committee.
Could we go back one stage for new councillors, new members, of what Section 19 actually is?
Yep, so Section 19 is an investigation into the source of flooding where there has been a significant flood that has affected internally. And normally we use around 20 properties, but sometimes if it's an unknown source of flooding, we'll do a Section 19 for a smaller number. But the key activity is to investigate the source of the flooding, why it happened, and recommendations on how to prevent that happening again in the future. Those reports, when we do them, we will do a call for evidence that will be advertised online in papers, etc., to make sure that anyone who has had internal flooding has the opportunity to get in touch with the flood risk management team and make sure that we understand what happened to their property, that they can submit photographs, videos, evidence. All of that comes together and is gone through with the hydrological information and rainfall data and anything else that we can gather using consultants to understand how that incident occurred, from surface water, rainwater flooding, fluvial flooding or coastal flooding, and then that will produce a report that sets out why the flooding happened and what recommendations there are going forward for all risk management agencies with a role in flood management.
And Ed's one was because it was the largest landslip in Europe was it last year or the year before now? I can't remember.
So the Ventnor landslide complex is the largest urbanised landslide complex in northwestern Europe, stretching 12 kilometres from Luckham through to Blackgang. We had two major landslides between 23 and 24. One of those was 14 million cubic metres in Bonchurch, which affected a number of properties that were evacuated. Unfortunately, none of those properties were destroyed within that, but it was incredibly traumatic for the community and caused a lot of significant disruption for a period of time. And the town is still recovering from that landslide and the social economic effects of it. The second was in St Lawrence, where we did lose properties, and that was a less publicised. It was a smaller landslide, but had more devastating effects for the communities in that area. Both of those areas sit outside of the hold the line defence system. What sits inside the hold the line defence system as part of the shoreline management plan policy is the areas that the Environment Agency and the council are working on that grant and aid funding to refresh and renew the existing defences, which will be a huge project that will take around 10 years to deliver and is currently in its final business case phase, which is why we're seeing a number of engineering projects taking place in Ventnor at the moment to make sure that we have that full understanding of both the underlying geology and the existing coastal defence structures, so we can refresh, renew and ensure that what is put back in place is going to last for another 50 years and support the town.
So I wanted so you had some understanding of what we had done before. And I don't want to dwell on it too much because it's going to be in our work plan and we'll keep going back to it. But if anybody's got a very quick question, I'll allow that now. Are you okay with that? And it's going to be sent to you so you can have a look at it. Okay, yep. Is that all right, everybody? Yeah, thank you very much. So it's item 6 is on to decision. So to receive and consider the following items for decision. Okay, so the first one is 6A, and that's Shanklin Coastal Scheme, final design, page 15 to 46. So I think, Tasha, are you wanting to do that first and then bringing your colleagues in? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Committee members, thank you for your time. Today's report represents an important milestone in the development of the Shanklin Coastal Defence Scheme. Oh, sorry. Thank you, sir. Today's report represents an important milestone in the development of the Shanklin Coastal Defence Scheme. It's a long-standing partnership between the Environment Agency and the Isle of Wight Council. The committee received a number of updates on the scheme as it has developed, and we are now at a stage where the detailed technical design has been completed and will be presented for member endorsement by my colleagues from the Environment Agency shortly through a PowerPoint presentation. The need for investment in Shanklin is clear. The existing seawall and groin system is approaching the end of its operational life and is becoming increasingly expensive and challenging to maintain. Without intervention, the risk of failure will continue to increase, creating significant consequences for homes, businesses, infrastructure, the esplanade, the beach frontage, and the wider local economy. The preferred scheme has been developed over a number of years through extensive engineering assessments, environmental studies, economic appraisals, and community engagement, which has been wonderful within the town. The recommended approach is to refurbish and strengthen the existing seawall and groin system, providing around 50 years of protection whilst retaining flexibility for future adaptation as sea levels rise and climate impacts evolve. For Shanklin, this is far more about coastal infrastructure. It's also about protecting one of the island's most important visitor destinations, safeguarding local businesses and jobs, maintaining public access to the seafront, protecting critical infrastructure, and providing confidence for future investment in the town. The scheme is forecast to protect approximately 170 homes and 66 commercial properties, delivering benefits significantly in excess of its costs. At this point, I would like to hand over to my colleagues, Emily Gordon and Nick Gray from the Environment Agency, who will present the 100% technical design slideshow. And then when they've completed that, they'll come back to me. I'll close the introduction and hand back to the chair.
Super. Thank you, Tash. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for making space for us to talk about this project. By self-disclosure, I'm an engineer. I absolutely love this stage of a project because I get to share all the engineering designs with you. So you'll excuse me if I get overly excited about some of the pictures that I'm going to share with you. As Tash says, this is very much about the engineering stage of the project. There is an awful lot still to be done, and we'll talk a bit about that as we go through. So apologies if it's a little technical, but it's a really necessary and personally exciting step. For some introductions, I'm Nick Gray. I'm the flood risk manager at the Environment Agency for the southeast coast, and I'm sponsoring along with Tash this project. What that means is we hold the accountability for the successful delivery of this project. And Emily, well, you can introduce yourself, Emily.
So I'm the programme manager. So I sit across all of the coastal defence schemes that we're delivering in partnership with the Isle of Wight Council. So just the strategic oversight basically for those.
Super. Okay, next slide.
Well, this is me. So as Tash mentioned, this is the accumulation of 6 years of partnership working between our organisations. So we'll be presenting the 100%, so the final designs, which Nick will go into kind of the details. But before we do that, I'll just give you a brief summary because I appreciate some people are new to the Coastal Defence Scheme. You'll get Nick's enthusiasm coming through in the next bit, and then I'll talk to you about kind of what the next steps are for the project before we get to construction next year. So the Shanklin Coastal Defence Scheme, it's primarily to protect this area for coastal erosion and future flood inundation. So the coastal defences themselves are a 900-ish metre seawall with a number of groins, concrete and wooden groins, and some wooden revetments as well up by the chime. The coastal defence scheme will, for 50 years, protect this community. As Tash said, a total of 236 properties better protected, as well as southern water assets. There's quite a large pumping station. So without delivering this scheme, that is at risk, which would impact the whole town. And the reason that's at risk is because the failure in the seawall would result in the loss of the Esplanade Road within the next 5 years. So there's a real urgency for us to have to deliver this project. We estimate that it's going to cost about £14 million. And as I said, we're planning to start construction in 2027. So as Tash mentioned, the coastal defences are really at the end of their life. It's becoming quite expensive for the Isle of Wight Council to keep maintaining them. You can see here Hope Groin, which snapped, I believe, in November 2021 after a storm, and the seawall, it actually looks a bit better than that. That's an older photo, but you can see what we're working with, and this structure was originally built back in the Victorian times, so it's really done well. And given climate change, we need to make sure that it continues to be high performing, given the future greater increase in storms, wave energy, etc. So this here is an artist illustration. It's a little bit out of date now because it was done in 2025 before we did some public exhibitions, but to a large extent, it's not wrong. It still portrays that after this coastal scheme has gone through its construction phase, it's still going to look very much the same in Shanklin. And that's for two reasons. Firstly, this is a refurbishment project, so we are having to bring the defence up to standard and to today's health and safety requirements. Also, Shanklin is a conservation area as well, so it's really important that we still protect the unique historical character of this seafront. So this is a very small reflection of the journey that we've been through as we've gone from starting this project during COVID in 2020, which was very much desk-based at the time, to us coming out towards the community in 2020 to start engaging about understanding what people loved and enjoyed about the coastal frontage and what their aspirations were, to really hitting the ground running once we got our approvals to commence the next stage of our business case, where we started to really look at what the options were for refurbishment. And that involved us doing a lot of ground investigations and surveys to collect up all the information that was required. We've then gone on to develop detailed designs, which we've brought to the Environment and Community Protection Group as we've kind of progressed. I appreciate that might be before some of you have joined this committee, but we have continually kind of tried to bring you along, so there hopefully shouldn't be any surprises today in what we're proposing. Going forward, this summer is going to be quite busy. We're already engaging with a lot of the businesses on the Esplanade who will be directly or indirectly impacted by construction. We have an established coastal community group, which has been feeding in on some of the designs and helping to support the project. And yeah, today we'll talk about the 100% final designs. So I'll hand you over to Nick.
Super. There we go. I'm going to go through some pictures at a bit of a canter. If anybody would like more details as we go, please do just say. The picture on the screen at the moment is what is known as a 3D design model. Engineering designs were historically done on CAD, and we'd print them off on paper and give them to the construction team, and they would try their best with surveying equipment to build as is. Modern methods of construction, and we are really pushing hard in this space, is to take that model and that is effectively all of the CAD drawings pushed into a 3D model. You then have a laser scanner that brings 10,000 points of elevation across 3 dimensions onto the drawings. It sort of populates that imagery on there. The teams, when they are constructing, that will be in their cabin, so they will be able to see live as they're constructing how close they are to this 3D model. So it's a really massive step forward in how one does designs and then flows into construction as well. And you can zoom in, you can pan it. It's so good. Drawings that we're perhaps more used to. Here is the concrete sea wall. You've seen the picture on the bottom right, as is. The picture at the top right shows us those different types, the phases of construction that go in. So you can see the rebar, the shuttering, the formwork. I think what's important to know is the formwork on the construction will ensure that the finished face of the sea wall will, as best as we can, replicate the existing blockwork feature. So leaning into that heritage that Emily talked about, we are not going to give you a clean, smooth concrete wall. It will replicate the blockwork as best we can. Some other features to note is at the top we have a wave return wall at the top to keep any overtopping to a minimum. That increases the asset life, reduces the overtopping, and for safety practices, we also have that handrail, which we'll talk about in some other pictures at the top. Next bit. This is the visualization of what we expect the seawall to look like from the promenades. You can see at the top right, that's what you've got. Bottom right, that's the zoom in of the 3D model. You can see very, very similar, effectively, apart from the inclusion of the handrails. We've worked really closely with your heritage officers and the Tash's coastal team to get a handrail design that really leans into the heritage aspect for the town. The picture on the left is yet to flow through into the 3D model. That was quite a recent decision about continuing with the incidental seating nature of your wall. We see a lot of people enjoying this promenade on the seating. We've designed the wall to make sure that's included too. That hasn't been fully updated. That's why we've got that extra sketch just there. This is just a slide to show you how we're going to replace and upgrade. What's the word you call them?
Heritage pillars or
Heritage-
stanchions.
Stanchions, that was the word. Thank you. The stanchions will be very similar. Rather than the ad hoc nature, they'll be standardized, but kind of in homage of what was there before. They'll look very similar, just without the different finish at the top. Then we think about the steps down to the seafront. Again, these will be refurbished to current standards. So things like the rising of the steps to comply with health safety, making them as accessible as possible for people to get down. The handrails will be included as well on both sides of the wall. So people who have reduced mobility, they're able to access the beach in a way they might currently struggle to do. So I think that's a really important part of the designs we're able to bring, just to increase the amount of accessibility to the Shanklin seafront than what's at the moment. Wait for the slide on there. And then you currently have spaces where you bring steps in the busy seasons to the promenade to increase that access to the beach. Again, we've included those in the designs. What we're going to do in those gaps for the winter, will make sure they're designed in a way that you can put the drop boards in so people don't fall down a gap. So there's I don't think that's going to be the exact spot. I think we've tweaked that location a little bit, so just in case you're wondering why there. But that principle of leaving you gaps where you can bring in the temporary steps and then make it safe in the winter, that's all part of the design pack as well. And we head towards the beach huts where the asset changes a little bit. We have those timber or king post solutions. What we're going to be doing is, we hope, being able to leave those beach huts in situ, so we will use steel piles to go in front of them and then clad that with timber. So you'll get the same visual look. There'll be timber. There'll be timber on the front, but it'll be steel piles at the back to give you that engineering solution. And by moving it in front of the existing asset, it minimizes the disruption to the beach huts. We move along to your concrete groin. So Hope groin, this has taken us a lot of back and forths. The yellow hashed marks on the map show you the extent of the European designated sites, which puts in an awful lot of difficulties for temporary work. So when we get the machines, etc. What we've finalised on is removing the broken section of the groin. It's our modelling and views from community and officers is it's somewhat superfluous. It should actually lead to a better coastal process where the sand can flow around quicker. So what we're going to do, as you can see on the bottom right of the imagery, is then smooth off as a capping, potentially reskim the whole of the asset. We want to do some further investigations when we're on site to check on the residual life of that concrete wall. If it needs work, we've costed it, designed it. If it doesn't, then we'll drive in some value engineering and some efficiencies on the project cost and time as well. So that is the current plan for Hope groin, is to remove the ends and possibly reskim it if needed. And then Osborne groin, very similar. It's in quite a good condition. We need to do some further investigations once we're on site where we can really get underneath the asset in a way we've not been able to at the moment. If the foundations are sound, the concrete's in pretty good condition, we don't want to do unnecessary construction and close the beach longer than we have to. So this will be a space that we stay live on throughout the construction around potentially further efficiencies, further savings, and bringing back time on the programme. It's designed, it's priced. You can see some of the CAD drawings at the top. At worst, it will be an additional concrete skim around the top of it, just to exact same as you've got at the moment, but just renewed to provide that length of service you need that groin to have. And timber groins. So all the groins are in need of repairs. Due to the difficulties of ripping out and rebuilding, we're going to remove the existing groins, build them about 2 meters just adjacent to where they were at the moment. They'll be the same height, same length, but fully rebuilt with new timber, hopefully acetylated timber, so we reduce our environmental impacts of bringing in tropical hardwood, PVC. And there is one of the groins will need to be a little, thank you, the yellow line on the top right. Again, due to the designations, that one will be a little shorter. That won't make any noticeable difference to the beach designs, but it keeps it out of that footprint of the environmental designations that saves an awful lot of time on consenting without any impact to the overall efficiency of the assets. I would just pause on groins, sorry, and just say timber. If you've not seen a timber groin being built, it's incredibly interesting how big they are as an asset. So I look forward to welcoming committee to go see my personal favourite, timber groins being constructed. It's really good. So honestly, you should hear what I'm like with rock when we talk about Ventnor at another time. They're incredible. Super. So those were the designs for the flood defences, the coastal erosion, the engineering solutions. This is a lead into a conversation we'd really welcome around what to do with the pier head design. Our rules, our processes, our current design is to replace what you have like for like. So if we have to damage it through the construction methodology, we'll just replace it. But there's such a wonderful opportunity to do more here. We hear from the coastal community groups, we've heard from you all in the past, and we hear from Tash and her team that this is has the possibility of being a focal point for Shanklin. And we think if we are spending an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time in construction, this should be a space that could feel iconic for Shanklin. We have our hands tied somewhat around not being able to invest flood and coastal risk money into placemaking for regeneration. I hope that if we can drive efficiencies and value engineering in our construction programme, we should be able to do some of what we'd like to do. But there is a conversation to have with this committee around how much further can the council go to springboard off our designs and deliver something like that to really enhance the area. It's not our decision. We will give you what you have and it will be safe for the next 50 years. If you'd like to take this opportunity to do more, we would love to work with you so we don't just do timber and concrete. This is one possible design we've had our suppliers do. You could have many different things. It's your choice. It's your place. I don't know, Tash, if we wanted to pause, councillor, and discuss this, or would you like us to finish the presentation to the end? Super. Emily.
So I'll just quickly run over what's next for the project. So hopefully with your approval to progress, we will be going out to tender in September through to October, November, with a mini competition on the Environment Agency's framework. So it's a beach management framework. It has suppliers who are very experienced with delivering exactly this type of work. By the end of the year, we will know who is then going to construct the project and how much it's going to cost. And from that, we will then be able to start gearing up with more confidence to go out and speak externally to the businesses, to the community, and start talking about what that construction is going to look like. We do have one kind of big approval stage to go through, which will happen at the start of the year, where we have to have the final business case signed off. Once we have done that, that will then release the funds for us to start the mobilisation on site in spring for construction to start in the summer. And Whilst we don't know yet who's building the scheme, we have had early supplier engagement. So they've been supporting us throughout the whole of the project, its development. We are confident that we can construct the scheme with only partial beach closures. So not a full beach closure, but probably closing 2 to 3 bays at a time and rolling that so it's a phased pattern over 3 to 4 years. We're also confident that we will be able to build the new seawall without the full closure of the road as well. So still having traffic able to go to the end of the cul-de-sac, but with two-way traffic management. For a lot of the businesses on the Esplanade, they will be able to function as normal, so business as usual. There will be some businesses who are on the Esplanade side of the promenade side of the frontage, and we are engaging with them around their entitlement and ability in the process to claim for compensation. As I mentioned, we will be continuing with that engagement for businesses and the community. So as soon as we've kind of got that better clarity on what the construction plan looks like, we will start sharing.
So just to sum up, Chair, today is seeking your approval for the engineering side of the designs. That allows us to go out to tender to bring back in due course to another committee meeting, not just the who and the when and the how, but also sort of a more nuanced conversation around what does some of the specifics of the Esplanade and the promenade look like. So things like planting, things like pier head designs, things like compensation for the communities. Those are things that we don't have the answers for today. We're not asking for approval for that. That will be in the winter. Today is the engineering concept to allow us to go out for tender with those designs that we shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Emily. So just to finalise that introduction to the paper, Chair, members should note that the decision before the committee today is limited to the endorsement of the completed technical design. The report is not seeking approval for construction, nor is it seeking any funding contribution from the council at this time. And it does not commit the council to any additional capital investment. Those matters would return to any appropriate governance process should they be decisions for the future. In terms of those discussions around place-making opportunities, the project is funding 2 grant and aid funded roles as senior users that will represent the Isle of Wight Council, both as the asset owner and asset maintainer, but also to support seeking that investment, growth, placemaking funding for those enhancements. So those conversations will be had in depth with the committee when we do have employed those 2 roles, one for Ventnor, one for the Bay area. So at this point, the recommendation from officers is that the committee endorses the completed 100% design for Shanklin Coastal Defence Scheme, that they note the endorsement of the design does not commit the council to any additional capital funding contribution, that they note the proposed programme for the Environment Agency full business case approval, procurement and construction, including full business case submission in December, revisiting the committee in January, and the construction commencement in August 2027. And that the committee notes the ongoing stakeholder and community engagement. With that, and prior to questions on the report and recommendations, I will return you to the chair to seek a motion, proposer and seconder, and then once that is established, we will be enabled to have the debate. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to open it up to questions though for 10 minutes or so. Councillor Blake, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of notes and a question. First of all, I'm pleased that you've designed something that we can't see yet to replace the seating that's ad hoc seating, to use your phrase earlier. That is getting replaced by the handrails, because that is actually a very used space down there on the seafront. And I'm also interested to see what ad hoc standardisation looks like with it comes to the pillars. Anyway, the seasonal steps. Has any thought been given to it when the season is? Given that that as it's easterly facing, when you get a large storm easterly, the chances are it's during the summer tourist season. So therefore, what thoughts are given around preemptively moving those steps, and who's going to be oversee doing that? Because obviously, if that's something that as asset maintainer, we have to do as a council. That's something that we need to work into our budget. Or we already do apparently. The other thing, the Osborne groin, obviously has pretty solid foundations on the base of Shanklin ledge compared to the Hope groin, which is, as far as I'm aware, just on softer clay and sand. So I think it's be good to sort of do what I think your proposal to cut down the surface area a bit of the Hope groin is a good way forward on that. But one of my main question is, given that Sandown Bay as a whole is losing beach material very rapidly, what steps have been put in, maybe actual wage steps, to mitigate against that, given that we've seen a very regressive amount of beach material being lost through that area, particularly Osborne Ledge onwards, and then also building that into our thinking into Yaveland as well, which is suffering the same problem.
Yeah, do you want to take it?
Sure. So on that beach levels question, I think it's been recognised by the Environment Agency and the Isle of Wight Council that over recent years, the groins themselves haven't been maintained. So the investment that we're doing in Shanklin, as well as at Yaveland, through the joint partnership projects, but also the works that the Isle of Wight Council are undertaking in Lake and in other parts of Sandown Bay, as well as probably other locations on the island, reflects that appreciation that we need to still maintain those beach levels by putting in those groins again.
So I might be able to add a bit more. The sea wall will be designed for a beach level that is lower than what is currently there. So the sand is a really important amenity asset. Goodness me, it is. But it's not necessary for the structural stability of the concrete wall. So as a flood and an erosion asset, it will survive without your sandy beach. Whether or not the sandy beach survives for tourism, that's out of scope for us to consider. But as Emily says, the groins will definitely help. Goodness me, the groins will go a long way to stabilising those beach levels as best we can.
A very quick supplementary, if that's okay, just to say, because keeping what we've got there is one thing, but the larger problem we have is that there doesn't seem to be sand coming down Longshore Drift anymore to replenish. And my concern going on forward is what we're going to do to address that, because sand and beach material provides a substantial part of our coastal defence plan in the absence of a hold the line strategy across much of the island. I say as a question, more of a statement.
In terms of that longer term sediment transport, as many of the members know from previous conversations and those who don't, most of the sand that exists through the Bay Area and round to Ryde moves anti-clockwise around the island from the erosion of the southwest coast. So that erosion rate of the southwest coast is our key supply. And as that moves into different materials that aren't necessarily sandstones, but maybe mudstones, that supply will weaken. And we need to understand that. So some of the options available to us in the future to maintain beaches are moving existing sand that is built up into other areas. We've done that in Ventnor. It's happened in other parts of the island. The Isle of Wight counts as one sediment cell, so we can move built up sand from one location to another for beach replenishment. So that's one of our management options available to us. We can do that through moving accretions such as by Ryde Harbour, where it's got very long and deep. We could move that sand back to Sandown if we needed to, rather than buy in new supply. So beach replenishment is an option, and it's one of the things we will need to consider when the assets are returned to us over time, should we get to a point where the groins are no longer sufficient once repaired to maintain that amenity beach. But it's also important to understand that the defences that are being constructed will survive whether the beach is there or not. Therefore, that beach replenishment is a council decision, not a maintenance requirement.
Yeah, these may be questions that have already been answered in previous committees, but it says that construction commencement hopes to be August 2027. Do we have any idea how long we think that the construction will take? And the consultation results, are they anywhere for us to see? I don't know whether you've already seen them, probably. Thank you.
Emily?
Yeah, so for us, we're aiming to get to construction as soon as possible. So a very tight programme, but that's recognising some of the funding challenges that we might have in future years, but also the age of the seawall as well, and recognising that there are parts of it where we really need to get in quite quickly. So the previous rounds of consultation that we have done on our project website, I believe they're on there, but we do a kind of a summary document following each of those big exhibition things. So those will be available. And if they're not for whatever reason, and we'll check after, I'll make sure that they're available to you. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So at the moment, our early supplier construction company have advised it would take, they're saying 4 years if they were going to do the works. Our consultants think that we could probably push for 3 years, but really it will depend on the companies that come back when we got to tender this autumn. So we are looking for, you know, that efficiency, that reduced disruption to the community is really important. So it's a big consideration in the scope that we're putting to them.
It's also important to note that the Environment Agency are very much looking at a construction programme that does sections of the beach at a time, not closing the entire beach and promenade in one go, because that would have a very detrimental effect on the economy. So that programme is based around ensuring that the economic and tourism use remains throughout the programme.
Okay, Richard, yeah.
I think it's a great idea. It's brilliant. Just looking, and you just brought it up, the funding gap. Are you confident that you will get the funding gap? Because if I looked at it rightly, it's about £9 million difference. So how confident are you that you'll get this funding gap? Basically, you get it paid for, basically.
Yeah, great question. And probably since almost the paper was written, DEFRA has created a new funding process for floods and erosion assets. I won't bother with the historic one, but historically there was a funding gap. The current process has benefited Shanklin greatly. We are 100% funded for the works that we are going to do. So there is no funding gap to deliver the engineering solutions. As Emily pointed out during the presentation, we still need to get that final business case approved. There's always a chance they might say no, unlikely, but however, there is no requirement for the council or anybody else to contribute to the delivery of these flood and erosion risk projects. Notwithstanding the point around pier head and any other sort of enhancements is the phrase we use, that would come from external funding, but the pure engineering, that is fully funded. And there's an update from the paper because, I mean, it changed April, May time, and we're still getting to grips. I mean, I don't think all the funding guidance is fully, but exceptional news for Shanklin and the council.
Yeah. Anybody else? I've got a question. So, I'll bring you in. So two things actually. So the handrails, I'd like to know how long these things last, because obviously that seems like maybe the thing that wouldn't last as long, but please, after showing me this, probably you've got other stuff that works well now.
So the question is the metal for the handrails. They would be designed with some maintenance assumed to survive for the same amount of periods. Again, that would be part of the handover pack to the council, and Tash and her team have been part of that, because you could go for very, very cheap, but then it gets replaced very often all the way to the other end. And I forget the exact specification.
Yeah, we've been working with Natasha's team. The type of hand railing that's going in is of low maintenance. So for a period of 30 years, we shouldn't need to do any works to the handrail itself. So
Clever these days, isn't it? I'm very impressed with everything. Councillors, sorry, officers, Natasha particularly, Simon, are you assured that this is okay?
Yep, we have absolute assurance through our partnership working with the Environment Agency that this technical design is the right solution for Shanklin, and will bring further investment pipeline for the entire seafront area.
And then going back to the place planning, which is a must. Have you met Councillor Llewellyn at the back there? That's the councillor for the area. Really important. Have you got a question you'd like to ask?
Thank you, Chair. I sit here with two hats on. I don't really want to ask a question at this stage because I'm pretty well au fait with everything that's happening. But I'm sitting here, as I say, with two hats on. Firstly, as Chair of PFR, I can see no reason why we would object to this at PFR. It appears to be completely funded. And certainly at this stage, I don't think either the council or the Environment Agency will be coming to us for any funds. I take the point about per head and everything else, but we will need to discuss that at a further date. So as far as PFR is concerned, I'm happy with it. I'm happy, it sounds terribly grand. I think we will be happy with it. And then secondly, I sit here as the councillor for Shanklin South, into which the Esplanade firmly sits. Now, during the time of the election, I stood on many doorsteps and talked to many people, and I didn't have one person who was against this scheme. Since the election, I've spoken to even more people who are directly involved with the scheme, and again, I've had no pushback whatsoever. As far as the engineering designs are concerned, I've spoken to Natasha, I've spoken to Nick and Em, and I've spoken to other people involved in the whole thing, and it seems to be that we are going to be trying to recreate to the best of our ability what is already there, so we won't be destroying the existing area. I've also had quite a lot of interaction with some of the businesses. One or two of them are quite concerned about how it's going to affect them directly. I think between myself, Natasha, and Nick and Em, we are putting their fears to rest. Other businesses who I've spoken to, the steamer in, for instance, they are resigned to the fact that it needs doing. They're actually very grateful for the fact that it's going to be done because they recognise that they possibly only have a few years left if we don't do something. So, cap it all, as Shanklin South councillor, I would urge the committee to recommend this or to pass it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. That's very refreshing to hear. Thank you for your contribution. So I don't suppose anybody's got an alternative proposal than the one that's on there because there's a lot of noting anyway. So does anybody want to put that as a proposal? Councillor Blake, anybody would like to second that? Or should we find it? We'll go with you. We'll go with Councillor Ben. Okay, and by affirmation, are we all for that? We're noting and doing, everybody will do it in one go. There you go. Thank you very much for your hard work, everybody. Okay, so next decision is 6B, which is the Food Hygiene Standards Intervention Programme 26 to 27. That's pages 47 to 90. And that's for Rachel to talk us through. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. And committee members, this report introduces and seeks a decision for the approval of the Food Hygiene and Standards Intervention Programme for this financial year, so that's 26-27. The plan also sets out a little bit of the performance and overview of the previous financial year, and it also certainly sets out how we're going to deliver our statutory obligations under the Food Standards Agency for the island's premises, which we've got about 1,700 or so registered food premises here on the Isle of Wight. The plan does take a risk-based approach. It focuses available resources and it focuses on those businesses that we have knowledge that pose the greatest potential risk to health, while making use of some of those flexibilities that we have under the Food Law Code of Practice. This approach, this risk-based approach, is necessary given the other service demands on the team, in addition to the national challenges we've got in recruiting qualified professionals. So despite those pressures, over the previous years, we've delivered significant improvements, reducing the overdue number of food hygiene inspections considerably, and also reducing the number of unrated premises we have here on the island. We've also last year achieved 82% of the inspection target when we set out to achieve 66%. So again, an outstanding achievement by the team. We do have seasonal pressures here on the island, and we also do have quite a big turnover of businesses. So we do receive about 200 new registrations for businesses on an annual basis. So the 2026-27 programme, which we already obviously have started, proposes 843 food hygiene interventions, and that represents 77% of the total due interventions. In addition, while we're at the premises for food hygiene, we'll also pick up food standards inspections, interventions. So that's another 390 of those. And that's 82% of what is expected of that service. So priority, as I've said, will be given to the high-risk premises, the ones that we know are not compliant, and the newly registered premises that obviously we do not know the risk that they pose. While lower risk premises are going to be managed through alternative intervention methods where they're appropriate. So this plan also includes responding to complaints, managing any food incidents, responding to food poisoning notifications, undertaking some sampling activities, delivering enforcement where necessary, and our continued participation in the National Food Hygiene Rating Scheme. So I believe approval of the programme will provide a proportionate, achievable framework. It will protect public health, support compliant businesses, manage our regulatory risks, and ensure that as a council we continue to meet our statutory obligations by the Food Standards Agency. Hence the recommendation for approval of the plan. Back to you for questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel, your title is your team manager, aren't you?
Yes,
Just so
I
you
am.
can-
Yes.
If people
Sorry,
haven't met you
environmental
before.
health manager.
Yeah,
Sorry.
some people might not met you before. Michelle, do you want to say anything as lead on it?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Michelle Love. I'm the Service Director for Highways and Community Protection. Rachel sits within my team, so obviously I fully support the paper that she's put forward tonight.
Thank you very much. Anybody got? I've got a question. I used to be a cabinet member, but I do have a question about what's allocated, who hardly allocated occupied mean?
So yeah, how many are allocated, but then how many are actually occupied? Because we've got vacant posts that actually we are going to take on 2 apprentices in September. So how many we've got allocated within the plan, but then how many actually are occupied currently?
Thank you. Right, has anybody else got any questions for Rachel or for Michelle? Thank you.
I felt that there was quite a few spelling mistakes throughout this report, and I was just a bit concerned because it's a public document and I want the council to look good. And also on page 66, I found one incident, 66, I found one incident of number jumbling there as well. If you go to where it says food standards, as at the 1st of April 2025, the island has 1,719 food premises that we regulate for food standards. And if you look at the chart above, it says there 1,789. Do you agree? Maybe I'm wrong.
Either 25's got on or numbers on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, no, I can, yeah, I'll take those comments. Yeah, it is. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's, yeah, I mean, the focus has been getting the officers out and starting to deliver the programme. And obviously, yeah, I appreciate
Can I bring in Bengal, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide some reassurance, Councillor Conlon, the council does operate a system of report quality assurance. So reports do go through a quality assurance process before they come out and are published. Now, routinely, those sorts of things are picked up as part of that that process. Things like spelling mistakes and things that are put in when reports are produced under the stress of the day-to-day job are picked up at that meeting, and that does happen weekly. So there is an assurance process in place to pick those up.
Okay, thank you for that. And can I just ask one more
Ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end there, you say this will potentially see inspections for premises range from 2 months to 5 years. That seems a bit of an excessive gap, do you think?
That is a national framework that's set by the Food Standards Agency. So that was a bit inbuilt in the Food Law Code of Practice. So both food hygiene and food standards have different risk categories. So basically, at the end of any intervention, we apply that risk score based on their potential hazards. So obviously, if you've got an approved premises that's doing a high risk activity, then there's more potential there than maybe a corner shop that only sells wrapped sweets. And then you look at the compliance score. So that's actually how compliant a premises is. And that's the score that actually makes up the food hygiene rating. We have no say in that. That's a national framework. So yes, what it does, it focuses that risk on the highest. So 6 monthly inspections or 3 yearly, depending on that risk. But if we do get complaints in, we can bring inspections forward, and that is the maximum time for us to go out and inspect the premises. So they may be done earlier, but we're a little bit tied to the national framework.
That's lovely. Thank you for explaining that.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
It's a good question though, Debbie. Thank you. Councillor Ovian.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'm going to take a steer from you with regard to looking at a page number. So page 59. My question or my concern is regarding the full-time equivalent resources, because it's quite clearly laid out here that there's an expectation of 5.75 for food hygiene and 2.3 for food standards, but we're woefully short of that. And I just wanted to check whether that was a sort of financial capacity or whether that is a recruitment issue on the island. I can see that you have pivoted towards, trying to recruit and there's a lag time with qualifications, but is that something that we as councillors going into budget for next year should be concerned about and should be looking to make sure that you're adequately resourced? Because this is a very important aspect of what the council does in terms of the health and the safety of islanders. And I was just concerned about that. Thank you.
I think you have got money to do that anyway in your, but please answer.
If I can, thank you, Chair. So yeah, so obviously we do have problems with recruitment, and the way that we get around that is to go for or to promote apprentices, because obviously then we can bring people into the council to develop their careers, offer them the professional training that they need to carry out their roles, make them part of the team. So that's what we found as a successful working model. As Rachel said, we have 2 apprentices coming on board in September, so they will be mentored by the existing members of the team and taken through their professional qualifications. And obviously the intended outcome is that we then have qualified environmental health officers on the island that stay with the organisation, that progress through the organisation. We did, within the 25-26 budget, we did lose a post. So obviously there were savings that needed to be made. And so vacant posts, as I said, we had there was a recruitment that was unsuccessful. So within the savings that were made in order to balance the budget for 25-26, one of those, I think it was grade 10 post, wasn't it? Senior Environmental Health Officer was taken as a saving. So, but obviously the way that we've mitigated against that is to look at recruiting apprentices instead, so that we can then keep them within the organisation and grow our own resources.
Have you got any supplementary?
Yeah, so just going back to what they're supposed to be, 2.3, that is like 2 weeks of a full-time member of person, isn't it? And we're looking at 0.4, which is 2 days. Is that are we going to get to 2.3, or is that because a consequence of the budgetary cuts in April that we are not Are we aiming to get to 2.3 for food standards, or are we not?
At the moment, with the current budgetary situation that we have, and potentially looking at exceptional financial circumstances at the end of the financial year, there are no plans to increase the current capacity of the environmental health team.
Thank you. Councillor Adam. Ed, you coming after him?
Very sorry, I'm not going to give you a page number. Did I hear you earlier on, you said there were 200 new registrations each year? Is that seasonal, or are we actually increasing outlets by 200 a year?
No, we're not increasing. They are new premises that are taking over existing premises normally. So, but it does mean that we need to go back out to inspect. So it's around about 200 a year we expect. We've already had, I think, 94 of those. So we do see a bit of an influx before the season starts, just because of, but it stays pretty constant year on year at about 2,000 new registrations. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. On page 58, it mentions about the oyster beds and the potential reopening if Southern IFCA is minded to reopen them. We would be responsible for collecting any of the environmental health data around that. I'm assuming that's a statutory thing, that therefore, do we have to have a reserve, a bit of money put aside in case we have that statutory obligation triggered?
Yes, exactly. And we've got one active bed at the moment. The Southampton City Council have got a nearby bed, so we do contract the sampling to them. And yes, we do need that budgetary available if we should be legally obliged to open and classify any of the other shellfish beds. Anybody else like any questions? Are we happy with that? Go on, Mark.
In terms of the number of premises that have been overdue for food hygiene inspection, it's an incredible improvement compared to 2021, 2022. What do we put that down to? You're just great.
We've had a couple of officers that have qualified through the scheme, either the apprenticeship, the flexibilities within the food law code of practice then allowed us to utilise officers that maybe not have met the full qualification to do some of those lower risk, broadly compliant premises, and it also allowed kind of non-inspection interventions. So there's a combination of reasons, and also significantly skewing our service. The team delivers health and safety and environmental protection, noise nuisance. There's a lot that we deliver, and if you look, a lot of the resource has been put into food hygiene. So what that means is health and safety in the team has been reduced to be able to deliver the food programme. Anybody else? Well, I'd like to say actually, since I've been cabinet member before and after COVID, how much better it's got, and actually more people being looked at. So well done. I have that comparison really to say that. So you've seen the recommendation, colleagues. Is anybody happy to propose that? Or Councillor Lothian, anybody second it? Councillor Baldry, that's how you pronounce it. Make sure I get it right. Thank you very much, colleagues. And affirmation to approve the food service plan. There you go, Rachel. Thank you very, very much for your hard work, you and your team, as always. Okay, so decision 6C, waste operational policy update to reflect the 26-27 budget amendments. This is pages 91 to 142, colleagues. I'd like to bring in Natasha Dix. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This report seeks approval of the revised operational waste policy to 2026. This provides the framework for how the council delivers household waste recycling, household waste recycling centre works, clinical waste services across the island. This policy is a key operational document that supports the council in discharging its statutory responsibilities, both as the waste collection authority and the waste disposal authority. The existing policy has been reviewed to ensure it reflects changes in legislation, national policy and operational practice, in particular incorporating requirements arising from the Environment Act in 2021 and the more recent government simpler recycling reforms. Updated waste regulations and changes in guidance relating to recycling, household DIY waste, clinical waste management. Approval of the revised policy will ensure the council's waste services continue to operate within clear, legally compliant and transparent frameworks. Members should note this report is not seeking approval for changes to statutory functions. It is, however, seeking support for the implementation of savings and income recovery measures previously approved by full council through the 2026-2027 budget strategy. These include the introduction of charging for larger quantities of DIY and construction type waste disposed of at the household waste recycling centres, and the introduction of a chargeable household sharps collection service where residents are able to access alternative disposal arrangements but choose to have a collection from home. Together, these measures will form part of the council's wider approach to ensuring a longer term financial sustainability of waste services whilst maintaining compliance with legislation. Importantly, the policy has been developed with appropriate safeguards for residents who may require additional support. Assisted collection services will continue, reasonable adjustments will remain available, and exemptions are proposed for the household sharps collections where residents are unable to access pharmacy-based disposal routes due to disability, frailty, or medical need. The accompanying equality and impact assessment identifies potential impacts of the proposed charging arrangements and sets out mitigation measures, including engagement with health partners and ongoing monitoring. The policy therefore provides a balanced approach that ensures waste services remain modern, legally compliant, and meet the requirements of the budget setting in February this year. I would therefore ask members to consider the report and approve the recommendation before them that the committee approves the Isle of Wight Council Operational Waste Policy attached to Appendix 1, that it notes the policy supports the implementation of savings and income measures approved by full council through the 2026-27 budget strategy, and that it delegates the authority to the Service Director in consultation with the Chair of the Environment and Community Protection Committee to make operational, administrative and legislative amendments to the policy, provided such amendments do not materially alter the principles therein. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tash, as always. Would we like to ask some questions on the policy? Anybody? Councillor Logan.
Thank you. I think I was mentioning earlier, obviously we are all new onto this committee and we are inheriting a decision that's been made earlier in the year with regard to those two particular items that you outlined about the sharps and the DIY sort of waste. I do sort of flag up, I think it's at risk 39, I haven't got a page number, but that was with regard to trying to preempt the impact this could have on fly tipping and how difficult it is to do that. I know that there seems to be in sort of popular conception that our fly tipping is increasing, and certainly we're much more aware of it. But I do note that later on, when we've got the data later on in this evening's meeting, it looks like fly tipping is actually reducing, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. My actual specific question, it seems like really nerdy and specific. I've now looked to see where it is. It's on page 130 and part of the policy with regard to the DIY. And with regard to having an allowance for the household, and I really do welcome that. I note that in comparison on page 30, in comparison to the appendix later on, it details the amount of the allowance. On page 130, it says 50 kilograms, and in appendix 1, it says 50 litres. Am I correct in assuming it is 50 litres and it's just a minor amendment that needs to be made there? Or have I got it wrong that litres and kilograms are the same? I don't think they are. I think the rubble sacks do come in those big litre sizes, don't they? So is that just a typo? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lothian. Yes, there is probably a tiny typo there where we have historically looked at the per kilogram weight for asbestos and plasterboard, but we are shifting to a volumetric. So that should not be kilograms, it should be as per the volume of your standard rubber sack. And I will make sure that is picked up in the minor amendments. Thank you.
Colleagues, Any other questions? Richard, thank you.
It's not much of a question. It's I do think we have to look into it. I do think it's a good idea. I do think it's come up with a good idea, but I do worry about the fly tipping. I think we need to look into that deeper because I do think it will have a knock-on effect, and I think you'll find when we have these budget reports and the assessments next time round, I do think you'll see fly tipping going up. So, is there any way we can try and
Mitigate it.
yeah, that's to mitigate the fly tipping or put a deterrent out there? Because I was just talking to Councillor Gordon earlier on, and he said that certain fly tipping is increasing. So we need to mitigate it. What measures are we going to do to mitigate more fly tipping?
Tash, can we have some reality about it? Fly tipping is going up.
At the moment, fly tipping, Q1 this year compared to Q1 last year has decreased. And a lot of that is down to the incredibly hard work of our public realm officers and the environmental health team, who both deal with different aspects of fly tipping, a combination of private land or public land. We have moved to being much stronger in our enforcement over the last 12 months. We have increased, you'll see in the performance reports, the amount of investigations, the amount of fixed penalty notices. And we've also recently had an update from government on the new thresholds for increased fly tip FPN quantity. So we are looking through our in-year process of fees and charges to uplift the amount that we can apply as a fixed penalty notice. And we will be rapidly, as you've probably seen on social media, showing the effects of fly tip, but also making sure that the community are made aware of everything that we prosecute, every time we get a successful prosecution, to help everyone understand that we are taking this seriously. It's not something that happens in quiet back rooms, and we will publicly praise the work of our environment enforcement officers when they do successfully get fixed penalty notices and magistrates outcomes. So we are working to rapidly ensure that the whole community understands this is a serious issue.
And it hurts the habitat, of course, which I'm hugely a fan of. Councillor Blake, sorry that I didn't bring you when I said I was going to.
Thank you, Chair. The fly tipping, as Natasha has alluded to, we do have a very good public realm team that do keep on top of fly tipping, and obviously we've had measures come in previously that have flagged a risk of potential more fly tipping, and if they have come in, we simply met that need and got on top of it. I think what this is actually doing and seeking to do is be more anti the legalised fly tipping, which we have through unlicensed waste carriers that are currently exploiting the loopholes that we have. And this brings us into line with our other surrounding counties, particularly this mirrors Hampshire's waste policy. And I think by that token, this is a very pro-legitimate business proposal, given that currently our legitimate business waste carriers are up against a large number of men in vans, for want of a better term, going around collecting waste and saying, this is my auntie's 97th bathtub that she's had out of her house this week. That's what we need to clamp down on. That not only gives better value for money for our residents, but also will encourage, hopefully, more businesses to take up the legal route and making themselves a legitimate waste carrying business, rather than at the moment we have quite a cowboy industry that is allowed to exist under the current policy. So for that reason, I'm very much for this recommendation, and I think it gives us a lot better standing moving forward to not only meet our own waste targets, but also clamp down on illegal business activity. So I'm very much pro for this.
Thank you. Debbie, how do you pronounce your surname? Colin. Thank you.
For me, I'm against this charging for the waste, and having read the whole of this report, I don't actually have the confidence that the council are going to be able to achieve these targets of 100,000 in a year, and plus the 15,000 per annum for the sharps. And I would think that most of the people that are using the sharps, the highest percentage of them, are all going to be exempt from being charged for them anyway, because of being disabled, being under the NHS for healthcare and things like that. I think that we're going to find a lot of them will be exempt from the charges. The other concern that I've got as well is on page 130, 7.614, it says that specific allowance levels will be published separately and reviewed periodically. Is that indicating that there could be a price increase? Is this going to be, are these charges that we're being given now, is there a guarantee that they're going to be kept as they are for a certain length of time?
Natasha, thank you.
Yep. In respect of charging, this paper is, makes quite clear that these are the 2026 base rates as they're being introduced. All of our fees and charges are increased at a minimum of CPI each year to make sure that we're keeping track with the financial pressures on the local authority. If either of these items become something that we need to increase because we need to ensure that we're covering the costs of dealing with those wastes after they've been collected, then we would absolutely need to review the fees and charges through the delegated routes of the Constitution. So there is no guarantee that prices do not change in the future.
Thank you, Debbie. Gordon.
So if I could just ask one question. I do think it's a good business proposition to do it. Can I just confirm, you said that fly tipping had gone down? Because I'm looking at page 171 and it seems to have gone up from, with only seven fly tip actions taken, 203 this year, same quarter last year, 188.
Probably thinking of Q4 because I've just filled that report in as well. I said I'm probably thinking of Q4 then because I've just filled that report in for the next meeting. So if it's the other quarter, it's the next quarter. Yes. Sorry, I worked 3 months ahead of the paper.
Been ahead of yourself, Tash. Vix, please.
Thank you. With the price charging, I'm concerned for the staff at the household recycling plants. Can you explain to me, because I can't exactly envisage, at which point will households pay? Will they be able to pay in advance when they make a booking if they so wish? Because sometimes it can be embarrassing because you turn up and you'd rather pay the £4 to make sure that you're covered. Or are we having to put that on our staff, not just the staff on the entrance to the recycling centres, but the staff who are sweeping and giving advice? How will it work? Thank you.
So our team have gone and visited several sites across Hampshire who already do this to really get their minds around how charging works in other local authorities and understand the process. And what it's come down to is actually the other local authorities have found that the system falls over when they try and do pre-charging. And so what we're going to do is look at an existing process that we already have, that our residents and the staff on site are already used to. So currently, if you book to go to the tip, and you want to take plasterboard, you'll get your booking reference number and then you go to another page and you get a plasterboard license. And that says very clearly in the terms and conditions, the first, at the moment, 60 kilograms, because we're changing from kilograms to litres, is free and thereafter will be weighed and charged at X amount. So rather than create a new process, we're going to update the existing process so that you will go to that form and choose your plasterboard, asbestos or DIY waste, being very clear that when you turn up with that license to go with your booking, that you know your first amount is free and that when you're on site, there will be a direct debit machine there to pay for your extra. We don't take cash on site. There is no cash handling on site. It's something that's not deemed safe within that environment.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Blake.
One very
Not
quick question.
ignoring you.
Just wondering, because a litre of plasterboard would weigh more than a kilo. So is that in fact an increase in the amount of plasterboard that people are allowed to tip with the introduction of this policy?
So we're going to get exciting with plasterboard. Plasterboard has to come in whole sheets, which is slightly different. So a sheet of plasterboard up to 2.4 metres times 1.2 metres will be £5 after your 50-litre allowance. That 50-litre allowance, while sounding confusing, is about one sheet of plasterboard, if you were to break it down into a rubble bag.
So in terms of real terms, there's no real terms effect on due to this policy change.
In terms of plasterboard, there's a minor effect, but it's minimal.
Would be
But
a
it's to bring
slight
everything.
increase.
It's a slight increase in cost, but it brings everything down to a standardised size for the free element, so that we're not saying to everyone you've got different thresholds that you're working with. You're working within one threshold.
Thank you.
Makes it easier to understand, doesn't it? Yeah. Debbie.
Sorry, just another couple of points to make. Going back to what I said about that I didn't have faith that this 100,000 would definitely be accumulated here. If you go to page 95, item number 24, it actually says the council does not currently hold verified data on resident behaviour once charging is introduced, and therefore the level of income generation and reduction in disposal costs cannot be predicted with complete certainty. So there's doubt there. And the next thing is, as we know, the council don't have any money, but there's also evidence here that implementing this is going to have cost implications as well. And I wondered if that's been considered.
Natasha, I know you consider everything, so please.
Okay, starting with volumes of waste. So this item did not come through the budget setting process as something that was modelled in advance. It was something that came through the process, and we know our annual tonnages of rubble and things that come through the HWRCs. There is on average around 3,500 kilograms a year that comes through the sites. That is variable depending on human behaviour, because people change what they do. Sometimes people do a lot of DIY in 1 year, sometimes they don't. In the same way, on a drought year like this, we'll probably only collect a total of around 3,000 to 4,000 tonnes of garden waste. On a very wet growing summer, we'll collect 8,000 to 10,000 tonnes of garden waste. Waste is a variable factor that economies, environment change. So it is, we can never give certainty on a pound and penny end figure. We can give estimates. The estimate that was provided in the main budget is a quite high estimate. We've had to work to bring this to committee before we can implement, which means that we can't get a full year, April to April financial year, of income in, because we need to come here to approve the policy before we can implement the solution. That means that we'll only be looking at a part year. So it is unlikely we will achieve the 100,000, but we will achieve what we can do, and then we will monitor, assess, evaluate, and then see what we need to do in following years to ensure that we are meeting that ongoing budgetary requirement. In terms of the resource need to implement, that resource need is being found and met within existing human resources of the Isle of Wight Council, as opposed to additional resources, because we do not have any additional budget to put into making this change. So we are meeting those change requests in ICT and in communication and marketing through our existing staff body.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. If it gets approved, when will it be implemented? When will it start? And what? How are we going to advertise it? How are we going to tell people?
Communication is key, and that is something you will always hear from our leadership team, because we know that communication with our residents is essential to delivering what we need to. We're working on a strong comms plan right now. That comms plan will start to be enacted towards the mid-August. That will set out the date of implementation. It will set out what the costs and charges are. We will make sure that that is fed out through all social media channels, that is set out through press releases to local media, and that we make every effort to ensure that residents are aware. That will include on the booking page, book to go to the recycling centre, clear and obvious indication of the change. The contact centre will have an updated script, so when anyone calls to ask, they will have all the information to hand. And we will do everything that we can to keep that drip feed of communication over the next 12 months, because we know that we have a transient population and communicating once is not necessarily enough for an ongoing change of this nature. So we will continue to drip feed that as we move through the seasons and the transient population of the island ebbs and flows.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair. First one is probably another annoying. I'm new to the committee, so it's obvious, but this policy seems to deal with collection of the waste. Presumably there's another policy that talks about what happens to that waste once it gets to the tip and how that's recycled and the level. There is no, oh, okay. And then also the fees, can I just confirm how we arrived at those fees as a base rate? And also to confirm that this is planned to come into play in September 2026.
So in terms of waste strategy, which would be that policy post collection, that was something that was embedded within the waste contract that just ended, and as part of that business case for that. As a unitary authority, we're not required to have a waste strategy for the onward treatment and disposal and recycling of waste materials, which is why we bed it in our specifications for contracting. So we will set out in there recycling targets, diversion from landfill to fill targets, and all of those really great things that make sure that we are where we are now, where we're seeing 98% diversion from landfill, which is a great place to be, and we are one of the highest achieving in the country for that. If the committee wanted to see a waste strategy to deal with that waste disposal authority element, that would be something you would need to recommend and help us find the appropriate staff resource to do, which we do not have at this point in time. Sorry, your second question? Yep, benchmarking the fees we have done through our Hampshire colleagues. So we have mirrored the Hampshire approach to make sure that we have that consistency within the region at this point. If that, what we didn't want to do was start by saying, what does it actually cost us? Because that would be a far higher fee and would penalise our residents quite significantly. So we started by benchmarking as opposed to looking at the true cost, which would be higher than what is existing within this document.
Thank you, colleagues. Any other questions? Are you happy with that? Okay, do you want to read the
recommendation? So the recommendation from officers is that the committee approves the Isle of Wight Council Operational Waste Policy 2026, which is attached in Appendix 1 to your paper, including the associated charging arrangements, exemptions for exceptional circumstances and operational provisions contained within the policy. But the committee notes the policy supports the implementations of savings and income recovery measured approved by full council through 2026-27 budget strategy. And that the committee delegates authority to the Service Director for Waste, Environment and Planning in consultation with the Chair of the Environment and Community Protection Committee to make minor operational, administrative and legislative amendments to the policy, provided such amendments do not materially alter the principles approved by the committee.
Thank you, Natasha. So is there any proposals? Councillor Blake?
So I'd like to propose that we approve that the officer recommendation as worded.
Any seconder? We'll go with Councillor Baldry this time. Thank you. And then affirmation, please. And any abstentions? Or against, sorry. Okay, so one against. Thank you, colleagues. That was a good debate and questions. Thank you so much. Can I take 5 minutes so we can get a drink of water and have a break for a second? I know it's very warm. Just 5 minutes. Is that okay, Sarah? Thank you. I'll go offline for a second.
Thank you, colleagues, for indulging me there. Okay. So another decision, 6D, PSPO, so public space protection order. Thank you very much. Disposable barbecues, lanterns, balloons in public spaces. Outcome of consultation, pages 143 to 164. We're going back to Natasha. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. This report brings back the outcome of the public consultation undertaken on the potential introduction of a public space protection order to restrict the use of disposable barbecues and the release of sky lanterns and balloons on council-owned land. The committee previously agreed that consultation should be undertaken to understand the public's views and establish whether there was support for further consideration of restrictions. The report before you today presents those consultation findings with an assessment of the legal, financial and operational and resource implications with progressing a PSPO proposal. The consultation demonstrated significant public support for restrictions. Support was strongest in relation to sky lanterns and balloon releases, with residents expressing concerns about environmental harm, impacts on wildlife, fire risk and littering. There was also important support for restrictions on disposable barbecues and the use of fixed penalty notices where restrictions are in place. These responses clearly demonstrate that many residents wish to see stronger measures taken to address these activities on council-owned land. However, members must also be aware that the public support alone is not sufficient to justify the introduction of a public space protection order. The council must also be able to demonstrate the statutory tests set out within the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014 are met, including evidencing a persistent detrimental effect on the quality of life for those in the locality, demonstrating that any restrictions would be reasonable, proportionate and enforceable. Officers have concluded that further detailed evidence gathering, legal assessment mapping, digitally, consultation on those digital maps and policy development would be required for the council to determine whether a legally robust and defensible PSPO could be introduced. The report also sets out the practical implications of progressing this work. There is currently no approved budget provision for the development, implementation or enforcement of a new PSPO and no identified funding source. In addition, significant officer resource would be required across the public realm, legal services, GIS team or individual, communications and the demographic services to undertake the work necessary to develop a proposal. Progressing PSPO would therefore require resources to be diverted from existing statutory responsibilities, approved work programme and current corporate priorities. Members are therefore not being asked today to decide whether restrictions on the disposable barbecues, sky lanterns or balloon releases are desirable. Rather, the question before committee is whether the context of the current financial pressures, limited organisational capacity and competing priorities, if the council should commit further resources to developing the proposal that may ultimately not satisfy the statutory tests in law. Officers have carefully considered the consultation findings along those wider constrictions and concluded there is currently insufficient justification to progress the proposal further. This does not prevent the council from continuing to promote responsible behaviour through education, awareness campaigns and the use of existing legislative powers where appropriate, nor does it prevent the matter being reconsidered in the future should evidence, resources and funding availability and corporate priorities change. I therefore ask the committee to consider the report and approve the recommendation that the committee acknowledges that while the public consultation demonstrated support for restrictions on disposable barbecues, balloon releases and sky lanterns on council-owned land, there is currently insufficient funding, organisational capacity and supporting evidence and corporate prioritisation to justify the further development or implementation of a public space protection order relating to these activities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll go to questions because I think this is really important. And let's not mistake that the public actually want this. And it's just a sad state of affairs and we're still not funded to be able to do this stuff. So it's down to us really to come up with something else. So Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I've personally been fighting a campaign against balloon releases for some time. As a commercial fisherman, particularly this time of year, we are inundated with balloons at sea. It's not only is it an annoyance because I go to something thinking it's my market buoy to find it's a balloon again. It is a direct risk to sea life and all flora and fauna across our biosphere at the end of the day. The fire risk, obviously, that's been absolutely highlighted in the recent events, and barbecues do potentially provide a risk of wildfires, particularly given that we are now more predisposed to drought conditions like we are currently experiencing. And for me, fire lanterns are a hybrid of both of those, being not only what I actually see is being fly tipping at large scale, these kind of mass bloom wreaths and mass Chinese lanterns. I don't understand how that isn't prohibited under fly tipping rules, littering at best, just because you may drop something on the floor and it takes 2 seconds to hit the floor does not mean it is any different offence if you drop something and it takes 2 days to hit the floor. It's the same principle in my mind, and I don't understand how that isn't legislative through that. I am also acutely aware that this council doesn't have much financial wiggle room in terms of providing some capital to implement such PSPOs. In fact, we haven't been able to action some of the PSPOs previously until they've been sorted out over the last year or so. I would, however, argue that this potentially gives a saving to the public purse holistically. And my question, before I propose the amendment, which I would like to propose, which I have circulated to members at the beginning of this meeting, my question would be, are we able to lobby the fire authority for help for funding, given that the recent fire that started at Head and Warren cost them at least, or so up to, sorry, an extra £90,000 to fight on the island, purely just to get fire appliances over to the island from our neighbouring authorities. So given that we are looking for what I believe is £13,000 to implement this PSPO, could we lobby them to look to see this as an investor save on their behalf as part of a holistic approach? And afterwards, Chair, after I've had the answer to that question, if we could come back and I can propose this amendment as well. Thank you.
I probably should say at this point, I'm the Vice Chair of the Fire Authority. Thank you. Sorry, I was just thinking about me then.
Thank you, Chair.
The question can be asked, Councillor Blake, yes.
Through you, Chair. I mean, just wrap up. I appreciate that other people will have points to make this debate.
It also says about working with other stakeholders as well, just equally.
It does.
There's town and parishes and all sorts of people that we can speak to about actually getting some money, maybe.
It does. If you want me to wait to hold off to propose the amendment, I'm happy to do that. But I don't see it as being prohibitive to debate. But entirely up to you.
Of course you can.
Really minor procedural point, Chair, thank you, is there's no motion on the floor, so your proposal could be the substantive proposal for the committee to discuss. Yeah, and I'll leave that to you, Chair.
Yeah, so would you like to?
Through you, Chair, then in that case, I'd like to propose that we action a recommendation that says it requests officers to prepare a future report setting out feasibility, legal implications and resource requirements and estimated costs of a restricted or seasonal approach to identified high-risk sites, together with a summary of existing enforcement powers, information from Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service regarding wildfire impacts where available, and opportunities for working partnership, education and signage to be returned to the September 26 ECP committee.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Quinn. Yeah, so we open that one to debate. Would you like to debate that?
Thank you. Can I just seek a clarification to begin with? The recommendation is to not move forward, isn't it? So do we look at that first and then we look at what Councillor Blake has put down? Yeah, it's an officer recommendation. So we're looking to, we can go straight to that. That's great. I'd like to say I'm reading Councillor Blake's very succinct proposal there. I'm very happy with that. I completely acknowledge the fact that whilst we see Spain and France burning, West White burning, even Black Gang China's cancelled fireworks and being responsible, we are caught between wanting to do what clearly the public wants us to do and the backlash for last week, not just the financial cost to the public purse, but also the backlash against what it looks like to be a man-made cause of that fire, makes it very clear that's what the public wants us to do. Having said that, I did put forward in my own head to try and put down what Councillor Rafferty isn't here, but he put forward a whole host of thoughts, and I put those things forward. I'm very happy to support Councillor Blake's motion. The only thing, or whatever we're calling it, proposal. The only things I would like to do in addition to that are some things of no particular cost to us, because I understand that we are caught with that. You know, writing to our the retailers, writing to our MPs, the things that I put down on my one of B, C and D, which are not, not forcing us, not committing ourselves to the full PCSO at this stage, because I understand why we can't do that. And I completely support when Councillor Bates says about it coming back to the September meeting, because I think this is very serious and we certainly cannot do any inaction. But I also think we need to have a little bit more of an awareness, and some of these things what Councillor Rafferty put forward to us outside of this meeting, requesting, you know, a bit more information about the cost of last week. And weighing that up with the public cost, looking at potential signage, but maybe based on what already we have the ability to do under certain other acts, whether we need this additional legal status, or maybe we already have some things. And also, you know, writing to MPs to ask them to look at the national banning of some of these items, because clearly, certainly seasonally, and I completely support Councillor Blake in that, seasonally we are much higher risk between the months of, let's say, May to October in this regard because of the drought situation. So although I'm happy to support what is on the paper here, I would like it to go further than just that.
I think it's covered in partnership working, but I think you've probably made some notes, have you? Or you'll make some notes.
Chair, if it's helpful, I'm happy to. I think point C is covered by the recommendation on the floor. So to that end, I'd be happy to accept points B and D from Councillor Albian's proposal, being. I'll read them out with her permission. Request a briefing from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, together with an estimated cost of the Head and Warren response. I think that I think
just full disclosure, I have started asking those questions as well. So I
think that can be in an informal setting if necessary, because obviously we haven't got a scrutiny function under this committee, which I think is a flaw in the Constitution, but we'll come to that at a different point. It should. Sorry, in future report, if a future report is to weigh prevention against affordability, it should be to do so against a real figure of what a single day's wildfire costs to the public purse. And I think that does build on what the point I made. So I'm very happy to accept that, along with point D being to write to island retailers and campsites to withdraw disposable barbecues and paper lanterns from sale during declared high-risk periods, and also to our MPs to ask them to lobby government for a ban in the sales of these items. I think, I think if I could slightly amend that, just to say that we enhance our communications to island retailers rather than specifically writing to each one of them. I think that would. So words to that effect. And poor Sarah here is trying to scribble down my garbling. I do apologise. So with the chair's permission, I'm happy to accept those two additions to the recommendation.
D, and what was the other one?
So B and D.
B and D.
Councillor Albian's proposal.
Can I just go?
Yes.
Can I just go to Councillor Baldry? You did second it, so are you happy with those? And have you seen that? Because it did get sent round. Have you seen this one where it's come? Yeah, that's fine. I just need to make sure everybody's happy and you're happy and I'm happy with that. So you're happy to vote now. So would you like to say?
Yeah, I worry about not including the PSPO in this analysis of the costs of the PSPO. Not necessarily the option A, which is on page 153, but more the targeted PSPO in option B, which at the moment has got a cost of just 4,400 against it. My feeling is that I know that we don't have a lot of resources to enforce a ban, but a ban rather than a suggestion seems to work a lot more. We're in this room. We know that there's a ban on smoking in this room. We don't need signs all around here and an enforcement officer in the corner making sure that we don't light up. We know that it's a ban, so we follow the law and we don't do it. I think it's more forceful if it's a ban, so I wouldn't want that to go off the table at this point. I think it would be useful to see more about that in future.
Can I just paraphrase that? You saying about the signage for the PSPOs? I believe you do have to have that in place to enforce it. You want to come on to that, Ben?
Yeah, I only to say, if I can, and I'll defer to Councillor Blake on your proposal. My view on the proposal as it is would include in the legal implications the consideration of a PSPO. So that would be included within it, and as part and parcel of the work on that proposal, that would include the legal implications for signage as well, because there is both a legal requirement and some guidance, and we can do some work around around what that would look like, which would then inform the paper that comes back.
Thank you, and that would be my interpretation too. So I'm happy to carry on. It is, and I think it is worth noting that we have considered outside of this meeting as a group, certainly, the potential of bylaws, and I think that's obviously a wider piece of work, maybe not actionable in a reasonable time frame, but maybe something this committee can look to at future around potentially things like bonfires and things like that. But that just for public awareness that is being thought of in the scope.
I think that's where we have to end up actually. Vix.
Just to clarify, because I completely echo what Councillor Rochelle said there, would it be possible in Councillor Blake's motion where it says a seasonal approach 4 that we would identify by putting a PSPO 4 at that point? See on the second line, just to make it clear that that is not off the table, that we are still considering that. And would that clarity help Councillor Rochelle or anybody else that felt that we need to be clear in that?
If it needs confirmation, I mean, my reading of it is it would include PSPOs within the legal implications. But if we want that double clarifying, I'm happy to have that included.
Yeah, it's a matter for councillors on that. My reading of the proposal would include the PSPO. It's a matter for councillors if they want to include that as a specific line. Otherwise, I think it is included within what's before you.
Sorry, I'm happy if that's what we're agreeing as a meeting and it's on the record. That's good. I was saying I'm happy that we've said this in this meeting, haven't we? That's what we're expecting, and that is what can be reported to the public, that this is still something that we're not kicking into the long grass, that we are going to want to come back in September.
Actually got something on the table now, but
Yeah, it's just really, and I agree with, I'd like the opposals, no problem. Is there anything we can do now, like do communications, because we're going to be here doing, they're going to go away and investigate and do all these reports, but what happens, like, something happens down the road in about 2 weeks' time? Is there anything we can do at this precise moment, like communications out, this is not great, you know, in high-risk areas and stuff like that? Is there anything we can do with our social media posts, put them out there now, like now?
What I will say, we do have a media plan. I'll bring you that, but we do have the media here today that's heard this conversation. So hopefully there'll be some feedback that way as well about how important it is for people to be responsible and look after our habitat and our community. Thank you. Would you like to bring anything about what the council will do?
Yep, we do absolutely have wildfire pages on our website. We also have been putting out wildfire advice through our social media channels for the last few weeks, and we'll continue to do so throughout the drought period.
And as I said, interest as the vice chair of fire authority, I know the fire are going to be doing stuff as well. So I'll make sure that you're very aware what's going on. Okay. Thank you. So that one then. We've got a proposer and a seconder. So can I have affirmation, please? Yes to that. That's everybody. Yes. Thank you very much, colleagues. I really appreciate.
Chair, can I just double check that Sarah's happy with that she's got the wording down?
You can have that as well. So that's, you've got it.
Got lots of papers.
Just have it all. Thank you very much, colleagues, for that. Okay, so on to item number 7, performance management, to receive and consider the following items in accordance with the committee's responsibility for the overview of service performance and improvement, which is 7A, service performance and improvement, Q4, which we were talking about before, 25-26. That's pages 165 to 228. So do you just want to take questions? Do you want to highlight anything? Because it's always great work, etc. But should we just go straight for questions then, please, colleagues? Who would like to go first? Spoke about fly tipping, but I think we've answered that one, didn't we? Yeah. So we did. Councillor Rochelle.
Yeah, it's waste and recycling that we come to. The fly tipping incidents there, 203, which is slightly more than last year, but I think this is Q4 of last year. I think what's going to be interesting is seeing Q4 of this year and see if those charges do start to make an impact, whether that is more than 203 this year or not. The one thing that I saw on this that fed into what I was saying about the policy, because that came from, in the policy, there's a policy about charity shops, and if they cannot sell clothing, they're allowed to get, I think, 2 permits a month to take 12 bags to the tip. But then I was surprised that the policy then didn't say what happens to that clothing at the tip. It should then go on and be recycled somewhere and used in a way. And then I saw this, that the average percentage recycled, reused or composted from all HWRC sites is only 50.65%. So does that mean that the rest is getting burned?
It is a disappointing number, that 50.65%. And that is down to a number of reasons and legislative changes since our targets were set. One of the big changes that we've seen in recent years that not many people are probably publicly aware of is something called the POPs regulations that came into force with persistent organic pollutants. So those regulations change the way that we treat upholstered domestic seating. So previously to those coming in, we could take in your old sofa, chairs, all the stuff that you normally take to the tip, and we could strip it. We could take the metals out, we could take the wood out, and so only the foam and scrap parts would end up being shredded and becoming part of the fuel for the incinerator. Those regulations have changed the way that we are allowed to treat all upholstered domestic seating, and that all has to be now treated as hazardous waste. So we cannot dismantle it, we cannot recycle the innards of it, we cannot decycle those items at all. And that entire tonnage is now fallen out of our ability to meet the targets that we had in place. So that's one of the key factors that has affected the change in how much of our average percentage of total HWRC site wastes have reduced significantly. Sofas, chairs are one of the big hitters when it comes to tonnages. We also do have to deal with WEEE regulations that have also been significantly restricted. So that's waste, electronic and electronic equipment, which we always refer to as WEEE. And the regulations on those have tightened up significantly. So we have to be very careful about how we treat electronics when they come into site. And there is a bit of a national issue at the moment with trying to find sites that are content with recycling all types of refrigeration units. So we have a lot of national failures that are occurring. The third large failure that we're seeing occurring on a national scale is recycling wood. It's really difficult at the moment to find sites that will take wood for recycling, so that will end up being shredded and used for fuel if we cannot find a place to take it. That again is a national issue, not a local issue. The recycling markets are very difficult in the UK. They've always been volatile. I think I've mentioned this several times over the last 15 years. It's one of the most volatile markets that exists within the UK, and there is hot competition to place items into places where they can be recycled or repurposed. But at the moment, those three big hitters, along with drought conditions, will also reduce what goes into those HWRCs. We will continue working with our new service provider to improve what we can, but that will take time, and it takes that recovery inside the national markets to do so.
Community protection. No. So 17E, number of animal health and welfare issues dealt with. Last year 4. It's 24. Doesn't give me a page, unfortunately. Oh, yes, it does. On the edge. 173. Very tiny.
What would you like to know?
Why?
Why? Well, it is unfortunate that there are financial considerations. So we know that farming is an industry that is under a lot of pressure, that there have been removal of subsidies via DEFRA and the United Kingdom leaving the European Union. So we have had some incidences where obviously farmers have potentially not looked after the welfare of their animals in the way that they could have done. And it has been related back to obviously financial situation, loss of subsidies, etc. We did have one particular case of a gentleman whose animals the welfare of them was seriously compromised. So that's part of it. Another part of it is, again, the trading standards team. We are developing a lot of apprentices. So we have had the same challenges with recruitment that we have had sort of through the environmental health teams, but we are recruiting apprentices. So they are going out. There are now more. We have recruited more staff, which is great. So obviously there is greater coverage. So we have apprentices working towards their animal health qualifications so that we can safeguard our animals and livestock on the island. So part of it will be related to the fact that we have greater visibility and are able to go out and get greater coverage. Apart from those,
we're protecting animals more by
so our trading standards officers will go out and check both the quality and quantity of animal feed that farmers are using, and obviously the actual welfare conditions in which animals are kept.
My goodness me. Can I just ask one more question? I haven't asked any today, have I? The amount of money saved to vulnerable consumers by trading standards, they do a phenomenal job, don't they? Is that gone up because we're better at reporting it?
So we would obviously encourage that. So we have like our approved traders scheme. So we would obviously encourage local businesses to join our approved traders scheme so that they have residents have that surety from the council. Again, we do our door knocking, the communications about sort of cold calling, door knocking, etc. That actual figure came from quite a high profile case that went to court. I think end quarter of this year, so quarter 4, it was a company that was offering roofing and fascias, and particularly to more elderly people on the island, vulnerable people. There was a lot of deposits taken, no work done. So our trading standards team obviously spent a huge amount of time collating the evidence, collating the witness statements. The case went to court, and although that money potentially may not be seen because that person is now serving a prison sentence, they have had their assets frozen, etc., but they don't have the money to pay it back. The the benefit for the victims was they were able to give their victim impact statements. They were able to see that the process had been followed and justice had been done. So that was, yeah, that was the amount that was saved.
My thanks to your team, but just before I go to questions, could you also forward to this committee the scam ambassador training?
Yeah, of course.
Sally does, because I think that's really invaluable to certainly to all councillors, but certainly to this committee to understand what scams are.
Would you like
etc.
a briefing on it, or would you like it just to be for
We
distribution?
could have both, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we'll do an engagement on it.
yeah. So not in public, rather than informal, but yeah. So do that, and then we could do the training after that because it's good.
Okay.
So who's going to go next?
We'll put that on the work plan, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Councillor Blake, you going next? Seems I ignored you the first time.
Well, I said a follow-up question to the point you raised, actually, Chair. So would the new stray dog policy we have come under that welfare figures, that animal welfare figures that we were talking about earlier? That's different. Okay. Yeah, I was saying, because I wondered if that, because we obviously reaction to the new stray dog policy. My secondary question was around the amount of major planning applications determined. Sorry, my ventriloquism is getting better. It's quite a low figure. I'm just wondering, because how many does that actually represent? Because it's quite a specific percentage. It's not like it's 2/3 or 1/3 or something. Yeah, it's. I just wondered how many is that actually representing, and why? What is the hold up? Is it because, you know, for instance, we've gone through an election recently, and that's obviously delayed the planning committee's work? Is it just simply that, or is there wider systemic problems? Thank you.
Natasha.
I will seek a very detailed answer on that from the strategic manager for planning, because I would not like to speak to something that I do not have as in-depth knowledge as he does. Written response.
Okay, thank you. Gordon.
So while we're on the building, homes built, who classes and how are affordable houses classed? How do we come up and say something's affordable? Because what I've looked into on affordable housing on the island, I don't see many that are affordable for first-time buyers on the island.
The affordable housing calculation is a national calculation. I believe as the principal lawyer who also knows a lot about planning, Mr. Guard, has something to say on that matter.
Yeah, I can assist my colleagues on that point as well. Yeah. So I also sit as legal advisor to the planning committee. What I can say is that there is a definition of affordable housing that's contained in the National Planning Policy Framework, and that's articulated at a local level by the local plan that we have in place. So councillors will see a revised plan that will be coming before them at some point to have a look at. So you have essentially, to answer your question directly, there is a national definition of affordable housing, and that is then drawn down into local policy. So it's all dealt with by planning policy, either national or local.
The island planning strategy that's going to come toward. Yeah, thank you. Is that okay? Is that helpful? Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you. Right at the very end, so I think it's like page 226 or whatever. It's the risk registers. So we've got risk 17 and risk 18, and obviously having not been a councillor on this committee before, this stuff's new to me. I just want to check that I'm interpreting it right. When we look at risk 17, it says the current score is low, so we're on the right trajectory in dealing with failure of coastal defences. Is that how I interpret that? But it's like the penultimate pages on the report.
Okay, you got it, Tash?
Yes, so the inherent score at that reflects what would happen if they were to fail. So inherently, if we lost all of our coastal defences that are not existing within the major schemes, which is one of our other risks on here, the inherent score would be a very high impact. But the proactive work through the capital programme that our coastal defence team have been taking around the island on the 22 kilometres of hard defences that we manage has helped us move that to a target, to have our current score meeting our target score, because we are proactively managing the asset base.
And then for in comparison, risk 18, when I look at that, that is, the current score is very high with the failure of the waste contract. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, as this is reflecting Q4, you will all know from the media and those who were within this committee at that point in time in Q4, the contract failed. And we went through a very, very difficult time from December through till March to manage the settlement agreement, the departure of the existing incumbent, the transition to a new incumbent, and the provision of an urgent contract, and now moving into the preparation for a new long-term contract. So at the moment, yes, it is a very high risk because we are balancing several spinning plates and making sure that ultimately our residents see minimal impact of those changes.
Again, thank you for you and your team's hard work with that one as well. Councillor Quinn, of course you can.
I want to say something. It's not a question. I've gone through that quarter report, and I actually think it's really good. I think most of it is really good. You've got like trees. We've planted like over 1,000 trees more than normal. I know trees are like, but still important. The charging points are up. It's really good. So generally, I think the report is showing that we're going in the right direction, 100%. There is a couple of highlights, like fly tipping is up, and we've got flooding incidents have increased, and the shortage staff of the health and safety people. So, but other than that, I just want to say I think you've done a great job, and you're doing really well. And I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you for your kind words. That's Quinn. Anybody else? Councillor Rochelle.
Thank you, Chair. On the EVCP sessions, just looking for an update, really. It says that the number of successful electric vehicle charge point transactions in February and March, respectively, were fewer than in January, which runs counter to historic parking activity on the Isle of Wight. It is likely that the reason behind this is the relatively high number of charge points which are not working, and that Joju, charge point operator, are experiencing a delay in obtaining parts owing to BEV's acquisition of MER UK's public charge point network. Is there an update on that? Has that resolved itself?
Who will take that one? Yeah, thank you.
That is still ongoing. It's a nationwide situation at the moment, so there are still negotiations going on. So obviously, we are part of those. We receive updates, we contribute to meetings, etc., where possible, but we are to a degree in the hands of the national negotiation at the moment.
Does that one go through ERTI as well? From the stuff, or is it just here?
I think it's here because it's EV, but it can go through ERTI as well because it's parking, so it's a sort of cross committee area. But yeah, it's on this performance reporting.
Anybody else? So this report is for noting, really. So everybody note that. Thank you, noted. Thank you, colleagues. So just going on to the committee work plan. We noted anything so far. So one thing I think that myself and Councillor Blake, having been in the last committee, about the crematorium. We need to look about the crematorium, and we need to have that on the work plan, please. I know Alex is not here today, but Simon, could you please? It's really important. We've been asking for about a year, so really important that we need to do some work on that. Colleagues will give you an update on that. So we also, I really would like the committee to visit the energy from waste and recycle plant, please. I've been there before, but I think, would everybody like to a visit there. We do talk about that quite a lot. If you could arrange that, that would be really brilliant. And I did notice from the first paper with Nick and Emily, so the work plan February, April next year, funding for construction and the feedback to the ECP. So can we make sure that's on there as well? That's what I took down, but I'm sure there was other things that we spoke about. Any colleagues got anything else on there, please? Thank you, Councillor.
Chair, I'm wondering if under our flood scrutiny ability, we're able to look at water scarcity and ways of retaining water. I'm thinking about it's a potentially huge subject, and it can go all the way into planning strategy recommendations, as well as sort of flood and other scrutiny elements. I was wondering if that's possible to look at that and developing something through that, please.
Question. So, going back to Southern Water, Simon, and we have the CEO here, yeah, and he promised us some things on email. Would that come through here, some of that, please? I'm not saying, I think we need to start looking at that email and manage that, but I do think that we need to look at that email and start looking at how that's measured, please.
Yeah.
We work on that, or at least put it on the work plan so we can have a talk about that at agenda meetings. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just going to say we'll take some advice of where we report back the issues around Southern Water that were raised with members. Yes, I think we'll have, yeah.
Do that, please. I think it's really, really important. And what I brought up at the debate at full council, that's where I feel that we need to do the work of keeping that to account. So working out which is coming here, what's going there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blake.
Right, just to say, Chair, obviously there is some dealings this council will have with Southern Water over the next quarter or so. So maybe it'd be worth a Christmas type time report of what's been going on, just to bring public into alignment of what has been happening. But I agree with you entirely. It's across many different facets of this council, and that there needs to be the suitable home found. But I think that given that this committee oversees the environment and also planning strategy at the moment, I think it'd be really good for this committee to delve into that, given the workloads on the other committees.
And full council right into DEFRA, etc. And so forth. So yeah, we just need to speak about that. So we could bring that. Does anybody else want to put anything on the work plan that they might be interested in, or something that we can do? Would you like to speak about? But you can come to me anyway if there's anything.
Chair. I just wanted to draw your attention to the minutes. Line 51 had a committee work plan agreed in January. There's some items on there that have not been moved forward onto the work plan yet, so you may wish to refer to those.
I should put this on. Yeah, so I've got this work plan. So I've actually circled all this, but thank you for reminding me of that. So the flood erosion scrutiny ECR data project update. When do you want to?
That would be a November committee, please.
Okay. And then we've got the update on major coastal defence. We've just done that, have we? Is that what we've just done, or is that a separate thing?
That will be an update on the wider schemes, not just Shanklin.
Okay, so when would you like to do that one?
We can do that either September or November, whichever the committee.
We'll look at that in
We'll
agenda,
discuss it in
but
the
that's
agenda
coming.
management
Okay,
meeting.
colleagues. The review of the section 19 tracker, you're going to be sent that so you can have a look at it. So we can, we're going to look at that quite often
That will
anyway.
form
So
part of the next committee.
crime and disorder scrutiny update on the CCTV programme. I know there's work been done, and I've just been speaking to Cameron actually about that today.
The October meeting, and also the, I think it says crime and disorder scrutiny. It's actually the crime and disorder strategy. So that will be brought for review and adoption in the October meeting.
November.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry, November. It's the November meeting because I think it's fireworks night, or quite close to that. Yeah. Sorry, Karen. Sorry, Chair.
So food hygiene standards intervention programme, we've just done that.
That was today, yeah.
Yep.
So that's done.
Waste operation, we've just done that. PSPO, we've just done that. Litter and fly tipping strategy, when would you like to do that? Very topical
Now that we
today.
have a new waste provider in place and there is new statutory guidance under the Code of Practice of Litter and Refuse, as well as statutory litter enforcement powers that we've now been provisioned with, I think I need to take a few months to digest that correctly and make sure that we're implementing our current savings programme. So if that could be November or January, we'll discuss that in the agenda management meeting, but there will be some digestion of those changes in law and conversation across all of our major contracting to ensure compliance with amended law positions.
So I'll keep the committee updated on those as they come through the agenda setting that we go to, but we'll keep always everybody involved in that. Anybody else? It's quite a lot going on actually then. So, but just come to me if there's something. I mean, that's what we did with the barbecue, and you know that came up. So thank you very much. We haven't got any members' questions because they have to be written in advance. Sorry. Yeah, we're going to close the meeting, and I'll see you at the next meeting. Thanks very much.